Welcome everyone. We are Daddy Heat, and we are basically starting up a channel that we're going to be doing videos and a podcast based all around wrestling. This is going to cover all bases, so we're talking like the AEW, WWE, Ring of Honor, New Japan, probably getting into local stuff as well. We'll be doing hopefully a weekly or fortnightly podcast. We'll be doing videos on YouTube based around like reviewing, the events that happened in the week, obviously the shows, anything that happened in news wise, people leaving, coming or going, back matches, anything basically wrestling, we're going to be talking about. On today's video, we're basically going to be doing just like a little Q&A. So we've all come together, got some questions put together. We're just going to basically answering them, giving us history and about what we're watching, what we used to watch, what we like, what we don't like, all things like that. I'm Stuart.
I'm Jake.
I'm George. Oh, do it. Do it.
Timing, it's amazing. And we are Daddy Heat, so we're going to get cracking. So first question, either one of you can take this first if you want. So what is the earliest memories have you got watching wrestling that you can remember, where it all started?
Do you want to go first, George? Because as you know, I never finish first, so you go.
Well, watching it, I'd say I was in like year 7, year 8. So it must have been like 2002. And it wasn't that early in wrestling stages, but like I only caught it in glimpses. So I never really got to watch a whole show or a whole episode of anything, just because we were poor. So we couldn't afford the Sky Sports and all that shit. Do not say it. So we used to literally catch it on the there used to be a Sky box office, and early in the morning they used to give you like a free preview of any event that was going on, whether it be like boxing or football or wrestling or golf or whatever. Basically there. But other than that, I think before that I found out about it in magazines in school. Kids used to bring magazines in. I was like, well, there was this. And they also used to have posters of like Stone Cold and stuff like that. Yeah. Like that's like my earliest recollection of any kind of wrestling. I know it's not massive, big into it. Like I wasn't introduced to it. Like my brother and sister wasn't into it. But yeah, we didn't. It was just an off chance there. We just like it. Just got into it like that.
Nice. All right, what about you, Jake?
To be totally honest and up front, I don't actually remember. The first memory I have was being next door neighbours. He had Sky Sports because, like George, we were poor. And Raw used to be on a Friday night on Sky Sports 3 before they changed it to these channels like football, darts, all separate ones. It was Sky Sports 3 around 10 o'clock. And all I remember was the Hardy Boys facing like Edge and Christian. I don't know what year. I know I was in junior school, so it might have been a little bit before George started, whether our times collide or something.
Yeah.
And then after that, it was the pay-per-view when The Undertaker returned as the American Badass. And I think there was an Iron Man match going on at the time. So he chokeslammed someone. I'm guessing he chokeslammed Triple H. And then that pinfall went to Triple H and The Rock lost, didn't win the title, so to speak. That is the earliest memory I have of the product, and I stuck with WWF for years to go.
Nice. Earliest memories I have is, again, can't remember what channel it was on because going back, it's sort of like mid to late 80s. I think there may have been the first couple of like cable boxes, but like again, we didn't have cable, we weren't rich to get it kind of thing at the time. So whatever channel it was on, I used to watch. I think it was on a weekend, maybe it was on like an hour and a half show of WCW. They used to air it on one of the channels. So my first like introduction to wrestling was in WCW. And then sort of later from there, obviously like friends and family knew I was into wrestling because obviously watching it, I'd always basically watch reruns of anything that was on TV. I think even catching some kind of like British wrestling now and again. Anything that was wrestling, I'd be watching. Never really see anything WWF on TV at the time, but again, going back to the friends and family, because they knew I was heavily into wrestling, they used to go out to like with shops, boot sales, or places, and pick up like old VHSs of WWF. So like, come next couple of years, I'd like a big stack collection of VHSs of things like your Royal Rumbles, your WrestleManias, all stuff like that, and I'd literally just watch them on loop constantly. So yeah, again, my early memories are sort of like mid to late 80s watching WCW, come late 80s, early 90s, literally just watching WWF tapes, wrestling tapes, just like non-stop, back to back. Mainly things like the Royal Rumbles, WrestleMania, and Survivor Series, just happened to be the ones that used to buy me a lot, but which turns out to be like some of the best events they have ever had. But yeah, that's where it all started for me.
Nice.
What was you watching back then? I think you've kind of covered that anyway, but just to clarify, I said I used to watch WCW and WWF at the time, and you guys?
Yeah, mine was just WWF.
Yeah, there was no really no knowledge of anything else, to be honest, for that.
We're from the UK, so the wrestling events were a lot harder to get hold of on our channels. We didn't have like a big cable box full of like, 101 channels. We had like 4 fucking standard channels, and we was lucky to get.
We had like the odd live one.
Yeah.
That come to the country, and then we didn't know about it unless you was watching it. So
exactly, yeah. So that was like, yeah, again, hard to try and watch things unless you paid out ridiculous money for like the first kind of cable boxes that we got over here. So next question going forward, around that time you first started watching, what was some of your favorite wrestlers?
Jacob,
I'll go first if you want. This one.
Yeah, go for it.
Let's have it. Tag team wrestlers was probably the Hardys, mainly Jeff. Matt was right too. But then the main stars was mainly the big characters like The Rock, Stone Cold. I did enjoy the American Badass. I know a lot of people don't. I didn't, but I quite enjoyed his run. Y2J, and yeah, I think we were so blessed with sort of these big name superstars and big stars rather than 2 main eventers, and then the rest are trying to get there. Where that era was full of main eventers, so literally anyone could have the belt rather than the same guys over and over.
Yeah, like any match you were kind of watching, there was always kind of like top tier events that can be like not just put for the main event title match. It was always like the up and comers or like the mid class, but obviously there was always like good events, good matches, good characters, all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
definitely.
What about you, George?
Yeah, pretty much the same. Like I always tried to look out for. I think I was kind of a little past his time. Like Mankind, he just wasn't about. But like my aunt bought me a toy for Christmas, and I was like, "Who bloody hell's this?" He comes with like a announcer's belt on a 2x4.
Oh right, yeah.
Okay, it looks pretty weird. So like that was like kind of another thing that I knew was around because I saw like the pictures on telly and stuff like that, and posters on magazines and stuff. But I was just kind of, I feel like I might have been a late round for him because he was on telly whenever I tried to see him or whenever we was watching it. But yeah, basically the same as Jake. Like we was watching around like the big Stone Cold eras and your Triple H's and even like the sports like Test and Raven and as I said, like you got all your big powerhouse like big 5 like your Undertaker, Triple H's, Kane's, Rocks and that. But yeah, you got your small ones like your Benoit's, Ravens, Test, as well like all the Dudleys and Edge, Christian, everything like that.
Yeah, there was more stars in them days that were lower on the card, which you knew one day would be champion. Where now I think, like you look at someone, well, I think it's the total opposite. You see guys that are lower on the card, and you think they probably won't get a shot at the belt.
No,
Like back then, you had Jeff Hardy, which I didn't think he'd ever would, but he did, just because of how he was. Edge, Kurt Angle, Eddie Guerrero. These are guys that were fighting over the Intercontinental title, European title back in the day.
Yeah, definitely. I think you can definitely see that in certain companies as well, like whatever wrestling promotion it is, like you can tell some of the upcoming stars like they're putting the effort in now, but you just know they're not going to get anywhere in that company. Where other companies you can tell like they're putting the effort in and they will make it someday because they like sort of pushing their stars up sort of thing. So so for me, like again, sort of going back to that 80s era, starting off with like obviously because I started watching WCW, Sting was always a favorite of mine. He was probably one of the first ones that I see a match of. What I call the Billy Idol Sting, you know, the blonde little buzz cut, you know, little warrior face paint type thing. Always, yeah, again, just sort of took to him because of being young, probably the bright colors and stuff like that. Which you would think I'd like people like Hogan and the Warrior, but I actually never did. Macho Man was another big favorite of mine. Always loved the Macho Man. I thought he was a great heel. Just like the way he worked the ring, his attitude, his persona, everything about him was great. Liked a lot more tag teams than solo wrestlers back then. So like again, I've got teams like the Legion of Doom were really good. Demolition were really good. What you got? Bushwhackers and the Rockers. Yeah, again, just Bushwhackers because their stupidity, craziness. Rockers, I thought back then were like a good little tag team, you know, like on kind of high flyers, if you call them that. I was watching both WWF/E and WCW, so people like Booker T, DDP, obviously Sting still in like, you know, WCW, up and comers like that were really good. People like Chris Jericho, Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, loved them all in WCW, and then eventually they went on, as you know, to WWE, really done well over there. And in the WWE era, you know, sort of Hardy Boys, the Dudley Boys, the Edge and Christians kind of like era, I thought was like, you know, probably more so into the tag team sort of thing, but just I think they're like world-class wrestlers sort of thing. So next one I got in order, favorite matches. We're trying to do this in two parts. So for now, we'll say favorite matches for like that late 80s, you know, to 90s, 2000s kind of thing, sort of the eras you were watching it. Any sort of matches that come to mind?
I'll go.
Yeah.
I was saying earlier, I was thinking about a Guerrero match, and I couldn't, for the life of me, think it, because again, it was one that I saw on this pay-per-view preview.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, it was Kurt Angle, because it was just brutal, and you know, I just remember like blood being everywhere, and then him walking away with the title. But I looked it up, and it's actually Bradshaw.
Oh, okay.
By JBL. Yeah, and I wouldn't have thought that. For some reason, I had Kurt Angle in my mind. But it was basically, he had the title and he won by, JBL won by DQ just because he hit him with a belt. But I remember it going on for quite a while because like I knew that I had to get ready for school. And I was like getting told off to get ready and stuff like that. But I just wanted to keep watching it, see what's going on. So I ain't seen anything like it. And like, you know, I'd seen some little scrappy Latino guy against some big old, you know,
brute powerhouse.
Yeah, at the time it was like white privilege, like Texas big man JBL.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's one thing. And then, you know, later on in life, going back and watching everything. Now I know it gets a lot of controversy for like, you know, it's basically Taker and Mankind, like the cage match. Now, for the first half of that match, it's absolute dog shit. You know, it's boring. You know, the big thing happens. He walks out, broken ankle, and he throws Mankind off of cage. Yeah, fantastic, whatever. But then the brutality of it, once it's back into the thing, and Mankind goes, you know what? No, I'm getting up, getting back in. You know, for that kind of that, he's a kind of he's just a machine of a guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like getting up after doing that, throwing himself through everything. You know, he doesn't know when to quit, but he knows how to put on a good show, and that's kind of one that's always just stuck in my mind. Yeah, it's not a great match, but it's definitely one that's, you know, they're still talking about it today, and they're still celebrating it now.
Yeah,
you know, the anniversary just passed last year or 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the ones that always come up in conversation just because of the fact, as you said, like I think they sort of forget about like how kind of poor that match started off, but then it's just the couple of big moments or how kind of it ended, which got people talking because it was such a unique thing back then. It kind of stands out in that timeline of history to be like, oh, that was like a staple, you know, a big event between two big people. And as you said, like Mankind, when he was playing Mankind, Mick Foley, Cactus Jack, like he's just a crazy dude that puts on a fucking amazing show. Really does.
Yeah.
Well, going back to that JBL Eddie one, was that the match with the brutal headshot, like the chair shot?
Yeah. It was at what was it at? I want to say a No Way Out.
I think it was one of the smaller pay-per-views. Yeah, I don't think it was one of the bigger ones.
Yeah, I want to say No Way Out. I could be totally wrong because it's not a big one. I don't think it was Mania or SummerSlam or anything like that. I feel like it would have been something like that along them lines.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Because then I think JBL might have won it at WrestleMania, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah, because that was one thing they always used to do. They used to do like sort of like the TV televised shows would like have a build up between two wrestlers. They might go to one of the smaller pay per views, have a feud, and then the next bigger one they'd have that feud again. But then if you like reverse, like who wins title or like who got the win on the other one. So
yeah,
that's always a typical like WWE thing, isn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much it. What I've got for those for like the when I was watching it around the day.
Yeah, of course. Nice. What about you, Jake?
I think my favourite would be, obviously, where I was a Jeff Hardy fan, was the ladder match on Raw he had with the Undertaker for the title. I know.
Yeah.
I remember Jim Ross's commentary was, that's how you put someone over. That's how you make someone believe in a story. If you never watched wrestling before, you tune in for that one TV episode, so to speak, and then you'd be hooked. You'd be hooked on that main event, and you'd be hooked on that commentary story. Other ones to that would be, I enjoyed both Undertaker and Shawn Michaels at WrestleManias. I can't remember for the life of me of what number of WrestleManias they were.
Because I think originally, was it like, did Triple H face him twice in a row and then Shawn Michaels done 2 in a row? Or was that maybe once Triple H and twice Shawn Michaels?
Vice versa. It was Shawn Michaels twice.
Yeah.
And then Triple H twice.
Right.
Other than that, I really enjoyed the Seth, Cena and Brock Lesnar match at Royal Rumble a few years ago, the triple threat.
Okay,
that was fun.
Yeah.
That was but there was probably so many I've watched which I've totally forgot. Oh, the triple threats in TNA with Daniels, AJ Styles and Samoa Joe.
Yeah.
That was brilliant. They were
Definitely.
outstanding.
Yeah.
What about yourself?
Yeah, just going back to what you said as well, though, I think that with certain matches, obviously, there's always going to be matches that stand out that you love because it's either like one of your favorite wrestlers or you just know that wrestler can perform really well in the ring. But also, as you said, the commentators, they do sometimes a really good job of making that match more interesting sometimes than it actually is, which does help a lot sometimes, but that's always a good thing. So I read down a few matches. So some of these you might not even remember because, again, I've sort of done them like 80s, 90s, early 2000s kind of thing. So back at in WCW, there was a really good match between Sting and Cactus Jack around 92. Again, kind of like you probably don't hear of it much, but it was kind of like a standout thing because, again, like you don't really hear much of like Mankind, facing Sting. And back then, again, sort of Sting was really popular. I mean, Mankind was sort of up and coming. Or actually, so it wasn't Mankind, it was Cactus Jack. Mick Foley, basically. But yeah, it was Cactus Jack at then because obviously that's when one of his first started out. But that was a really good match. Punk and Chris Jericho at Payback 2003. One of the first times they fought was a really good match. They really kind of I think bounced off each other, like worked well together because they're both really good in performers. And then yet again at the Extreme Rules, there was another Punk and Chris Jericho rematch, which went down really well. I mean, you might have seen those ones. They were really good. Sting and AJ Styles 2009 Bound for Glory was a really cool match. Around that time, obviously Sting's getting on quite a bit, but I think in his TNA run he had some good matches and he had some bad matches because again, putting people over or like his age kind of got into effect. But that was a really good one because AJ at the time was kind of like the new up and coming big face of TNA and they kind of wanted to help him out. I know later on they'd done the whole Kurt Angle versus AJ, which done kind of like put him on the ball sort of thing. But the Sting AJ Styles one, really good. Going back to a couple of early ones, Macho Man, a couple of Macho Man matches against Hulk Hogan, WrestleMania 5. Obviously, Macho Man didn't win the match, but again, being a fan of his, I think he puts on a really good show. Just the fact that he took it to Hogan just made me happy because, I don't care for Hogan. But another really good one was Macho Man and Ricky the Steamboat Dragon, which was at WrestleMania 3, which is quite an earlier one. But again, if you ever seen Ricky Dragon back then, really good technical wrestler, good high flyer, good grappler. And then just putting him with Macho Man, it just went really well. As Jake was saying, anything sort of with WWE, things like the triple threats between the Hardys, the Dudleys, and Edge and Christian, always into them, whether it's TLC matches or just triple threat tag matches, anything like that was great. TNA wise, yet again, confirming with Jake, like anything with Daniels, AJ, Samoa Joe, Kazarian, people like that. The X division was just phenomenal in that sort of era of time. So like putting the people over, you know, like the crazy matches they had, just was really well done. Again, there's so many of them they had kind of. I couldn't narrow down like one specific match because it's like every time they got in that ring, it was just basically, you know, carnage. It was great. Next question we got was favorite, like your favorite pay-per-view event. So not necessarily maybe like the event overall of what happened. I mean, if you can go into detail, that's all great, but just maybe the events themselves. So for example, I'll take this one first. Like, comes WWF and WWE, I always liked your Royal Rumbles, mainly just because of the actual Rumble match. SummerSlam, Survivor Series, and the WrestleManias always stood out in my mind. I mean, some are better than others, but I just think they're like the staples for that company, that you always had a handful of good matches, always like put more effort in, bigger, brighter, everything like that. WCW, Starrcade was kind of like their WrestleMania, which again, there were so many good ones of them. I always liked Bash at the Beach as well, Halloween Havoc, which are another two good branded ones with WCW, which I think currently, AEW are trying to get the licensing for them to do some of their special events under them branded names, which would be pretty cool if they do get that. So
yeah.
and then also sort of go into that sort of late 90s, early 2000s, when like ECW was at popularity. This is before like WWE took over. They had a couple of good ones of November to Remember, Hardcore Heaven, Anarchy Rules. They were just some really good pay-per-views that ECW used to put on. Yet again, people like Raven, Bam Bam Bigelow, Sandman, Mike Awesome, you know, all them lot, just any RVD, Sabu, any matches they put on together, like if you was into that kind of hardcore style wrestling sort of thing, with all every kind of apparatus going, they put on some really good events, some really good shows. What about you guys?
Obviously, Mania is the main one that everyone sort of aims towards. I've always liked the hype around the WrestleManias. Elimination Chamber, when that was introduced, that was fun. Yeah, new concepts, that was good. Probably my personal favourite was the traditional Survivor Series, the 5-on-5 elimination matches.
Yeah.
And I have a soft spot for SummerSlam as well.
Yeah, definitely.
With obviously nowadays ones, any NXT takeover in front of a crowd, I really enjoy it because the crowd's great. The match is always great. It just seems like a fun event every time.
Yeah.
See, I never really got the whole hype of like, you know, just like I understand like the SummerSlams and the WrestleMania is like a big deal when it comes to like switching or swapping title reigns and belts and stuff like that, and storylines and stuff like that. But seeing something that I've not seen before, you know, like when you had 30 men in the ring, and it's like, oh Christ, well, why are they all in there? And then every like minute and a half, every minute, whatever, someone else comes out, like, whoa, like that's completely different. So yeah, always something that's had quite a bit of a gimmick, like a Royal Rumble or like, as you said, like an Elimination Chamber. Anything that's kind of different, it's kind of, you know, like interested me in a little bit, because I can watch, you know, like the 8, 9, 10, whatever pay-per-views they want to do each year. But I know that I'm always looking forward to like, oh well, who might be the surprise spot in the Royal Rumble, or you know, like what's going to happen in the Elimination Chamber, or you know, stuff like that. Another one, it was just a one-off, well, not one-off, but you know, I always liked the go back of Halftime Heat, the Rock and Mankind. You know, that big stadium match where literally, it was just the two of them in an empty arena, but like it was just different to me as well. I was like, oh Christ, so it's one of my favorites, and then you know, like the face of the company basically having it out in the stadium, up the stairs, backstage, in the conference rooms and stuff like that, in the lunch rooms and whatever like that. So that one I go back and watch a few times. But yeah, as Jake said, like the takeovers NXT is always pretty good. That's always like, they've always got quite a bit of a pop as well. They always seem to bring in the viewers. More recently, like Stadium Stampede, again, something completely different. You know, you've got all the talent there that you want in AEW, like, and you've got this massive gimmick show put on because of the the COVID and everything like that, of course they can't have thousands of people in one arena. So why not make it a bit more interesting? Use the space that they've got.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
and they utilised it pretty well.
Definitely agree with what you said, George. Like always, the more sort of like back then, like the different sort of like, oh, there's a gimmick going on. Like we said, like why is there like now 5-on-5 instead of 2-on-2, like a tag team, like the Survivor Series, or like the Royal Rumble with the 8-man tag, or like when they started introducing like the Hells in Cells and your elimination chambers or anything gimmicky kind of thing. It was made a bit more interesting than just having a 1-on-1 or a tag match. It kind of got you interested in, but you just knew that with the big ones, they'd always kind of like have a show, put on some like decent stuff for that pay-per-view, but then the next one will be the bigger one. They'd put like more effort into it or have a bigger match. But it was always a very gimmicky thing that every big stadium one they do, it'd always be like a title change. Like other ones, you'd know the title would stay the same. You just got to that point where you just goes, oh, that ain't going to change. You just knew it in your head, like it wasn't going to happen. And then like they do the big one, and then all of a sudden it's like bigger stage, all more fans and that, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, let's title change now. You'll drop it to him, you'll drop it to her, kind of thing. So definitely.